Hey guys, how are we doing today? I know I'm a little bit early here, but what I'm going to do is I figure I'll tell you a little story about my apprenticeship while we wait for people to get here. Now, to start off with, my name's Scott Wilkinson. I'm a body piercer. I've been piercing professionally since 1994, so I've done a few piercings in my day. And behind the camera, the voice you're going to be hearing is Jared. Say hi, Jared.
Hello.
Awesome. So we're going to start off with my apprenticeship. Now, a lot of people have been asking, and I've kind of told the story here and there, but this is the basic gist of how I became a piercer. Now, this was probably in the late 93, 94. I was living in Red Wing, Minnesota, and a friend of mine had came back from Hawaii and he had his tongue pierced. And I was just blown away that you would have a tongue piercing. So a week later, I found a piercer, had my tongue pierced, and within like 6 months, my piercer at that time said, hey, I'm moving out of state. If you want to learn to pierce, or if you want to get piercings, you need to kind of step it up and get all your piercings. So I'm leaving in a couple of weeks. And I was like, well, is there any chance you could just teach me how to pierce? And he's like, sure, just bring some money in tomorrow and bring someone to get pierced and I'll teach you how to pierce. I had no idea what an apprenticeship was. So I showed up the next day with my friend Andy and he wanted to get his nipple pierced. And he basically just said, well, here's some pamphlets, just kind of look through these. And he asked me some questions and I answered them because I had a clue what some of the jewelry was. And that's all he was asking about. And my friend Andy wanted his nipple pierced. So he's like, well, I've pierced you before. Go ahead and pierce them and I'll stop you if you do anything wrong. And I wasn't quite ready for that, but I'm learning how to pierce. So here I am. He showed me where the stuff is. I'm cleaning his nipple off. I put some dots on there and I'm getting ready to put the clamp on there. And, he says, hold on a second. Scott, come over here. And he pulls me aside. He says, okay, now you're going to pierce his nipple. You're going to have to push kind of hard, but tell him you're going to do it on 3, but do it on like 1 or 2. Go ahead. Scared to death. So I got this needle and I'm holding it there. And he's like, oh, one more thing. And he's like, yeah. And he's like, don't miss your dots. Go ahead. What a jerk move. I mean, honestly, like, set up from fail right from the get-go there. And I did the piercing. It was crooked. It was slow. I'm sorry, Andy. I didn't know what I was doing, and he should have been the one to step in. So I got a really crappy apprenticeship. Like 3 days later, he's like, here you go. You're a piercer. I'd done like 5 piercings. I didn't know what I was doing. I knew I needed an autoclave, one of these steam sterilizers. I didn't know it was a steam sterilizer. I just knew I needed an autoclave. So, and that's where I started. So day one, a friend of mine's like, I want to get my nostril pierced. I had no clue. I'm like, I don't know how to do a nostril. He didn't train me. He's like, well, you pierced an ear. Go ahead and do it. It's just, so I kind of was started in the rough part where I was piercing out of the home, trying to, and we don't condone this, but this was in the 90s and I had no idea what I was doing. Now, once I'd heard about the Gauntlet and the Fakir intensives and all these other training seminars, of course, I sought it out and I became trained properly and I stopped messing people up. Nowadays, there's a lot more better ways to go about this. Find someone who's going to give you an apprenticeship, which is not 3 or 4 days. Find something that's going to be a minimum of 6 months, preferably a couple years. And also, don't do something if you don't know what you're doing. If you don't feel safe doing it, don't do it. It's that simple.
So you're basically saying this was a terrible apprenticeship. This guy did you wrong in every way.
In every way. He gave me the confidence to think I thought I was a piercer.
Okay, so that was the biggest mistake, was just handing you the piece of paper that says piercer and then letting you go.
He literally did that. He literally wrote on a paper, I say this, I trained Scott. Scott's a fully competent piercer. Bam, here you go. I'm like, sweet, Sharpie on a piece of paper. That was my apprenticeship.
That's totally worth the money that I'm sure you exchanged for it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And also, do you condone going on 1 or 2, or was that also jerk move stuff?
It's a jerk move. How the person's going to jump if you say you do it on 1 or 2. That's why we do the breathing, deep breath in, you blow it out, you know when it's coming, and they're going to hold still and you're going to get straight piercing. Like I said, I was set up to fail from the get-go, but I found the education. I sought it out there and I became the piercer I am today. I started on a rocky slope, but I pulled through.
All right. So we started with a horror story. Now that you've freaked everyone out, let's get to some questions.
All right.
So Amelia wants to know, why is a snake eyes piercing so bad?
Okay, the snake eyes piercing is a horizontal piercing through the tip of the tongue. And it kind of, like when you stick your tongue out, it represents a snake. Now, the problem is your tongue rests up against your gums and your teeth all the time. When you're not talking, it's touching. So you're going to get gum erosion and eventually your teeth can fall out if you don't bite down on those beads and break your teeth first. It's almost inevitable that it's going to happen. Granted, there's people out there who haven't done that, but I mean, my insurance company will drop me on the spot if they find out I'm doing this. So, and I don't do them. So if you're watching an insurance company, I do not do them. I don't condone these piercings.
Is that the only one that's off limits on the insurance policy?
That's pretty much the only one. I can do all the general, everything else, but that one piercing that I don't do it.
See, so I mean, if they won't cover it, there's got to be a reason.
Yeah, it's inevitable. It's like, oh, you're definitely doing damage to people. We're going to have to start paying out right away. So anyways, next question.
Denise wants to get an orbital piercing. What are some questions that you would ask a potential piercer to kind of audition and make sure they know what they're doing?
Absolutely. This is a good question. First of all, ask them if they have a portfolio, any pictures of some of the healed orbitals or piercings they've done. That's going to be the first thing. Ask them how long they've been doing the piercing, how long they've been piercing in general. This is a very advanced piercing. It needs to be very, very accurate. I would say a minimum 2-3 years before I'd feel comfortable with a piercer piercing an orbital on me. Someone who's in a high volume shop who does this all the time.
So Jetty Media says, hey, Scott.
Hi.
Came across a woman who had stretched her belly button to 30 millimeters, which is over an inch, if you don't know millimeters to inch conversion.
Thank you.
Have you ever seen anyone do that? Have you ever heard of such a thing?
Not an inch. That's 30 millimeters or an inch on a belly button. I mean, the body's an amazing thing, and I've seen crazy things. Like, you've seen the people, the cheek stretching where you have the full glass. I've seen bridge piercings where there's 0, double zeros. So I've seen, the biggest I've seen personally is a 00 in the belly button. So inch, that's impressive. Or 30 millimeters, I'm sorry.
Yes, over an inch. So Ethereal Goddess wants to know what your thoughts are on chamomile soaks or compresses for piercing bumps.
I personally have never used a chamomile tea bag for soothing bumps, but it supposedly works. That's where you actually take the chamomile tea bag and it's actually used. You get it wet, and then you're going to put the tea bag directly on your piercing. I'm not sure of the science behind it, what it is in there that helps the healing and soothe the bumps, but it supposedly does work. I'm not opposed to it at all.
Because it really couldn't be harmful in any way that I could see either.
Unless, you have some weird mix of chamomile and someone's making their own. So more organic, I suppose, is definitely the better way to go on this one. And listen to your body. I say this all the time. Listen to your body. If it gets real red and swollen, stop doing it. But yeah, it's supposed to help quite a bit.
All right. Crystal got a tongue piercing 3 weeks ago this Saturday. When does the circle start to fade where the ball is at the top?
Not 100% sure what you're saying. Either there's going to be a little dimple, and if that's the circle you're talking about, generally it won't unless you do maybe a slightly larger bead or a lightweight. Like if you have steel in there, maybe go to titanium. The lightweight's not going to create the indent. Now, the other circle you might be talking about is the actual fistula, which is that tube of scar tissue. Sometimes it's real prominent, and sometimes it takes several weeks to maybe a couple months for that to dissipate where you can't really see it. A lot of times you can see this on ears, you can feel that bump if you push on it. That's the tube I was just talking about. So it's one of those two. It does take a couple weeks, maybe a couple months to go away.
Okay, Will wants to know how much you can stretch a septum until it affects the shape of your nose. They're currently stretching. They're only at a 12, but they want to go big, but not so big that they start distorting their nose.
Gotcha. It's a real good question. And use your camera phone. Take a picture and start referencing, and you'll be able to see the difference over time from picture to picture. But from gauge to gauge, you're not going to really notice it. I had my septum stretched to a 0, but at the same time, I was stretching my nostrils, and they're both all going down symmetrically. Sometimes you notice that septum's going to come down and really start shaping it. Sometimes it doesn't. I mean, I would say...
Now, your nostril piercings did distort your nose, correct?
Yes, for sure.
So that's not the same nose you had in high school, necessarily.
It's just stretched out a little bit.
It's
the same nose.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not the same nose. It's, of course, your nose, but...
Yeah.
But not exactly the same profile.
Correct. Now, if you're doing like you stretched up to a 2 gauge, we're never removing tissue and you're displacing almost a 1/4 inch of tissue. So it might go down a 1/4 inch. But now the septum is different for every person. Like when we do the piercing, we check to see how big that sweet spot is. If you have a larger sweet spot, that tissue might just push out of the way before it starts pushing the cartilage. So every person's going to have a different answer as far as...
And is it reversible? So I'm stretching, and then I go up a size and I don't like what it's done to my nose. If I go back down a size, that distortion goes away, correct?
Medium. If your piercing hole stays open, like what it did for me is my nose is definitely a lot more squishy on the front. There's not as much support because I stretched it so large, and that whole so I feel like it's more squishy down that way than it used to be. So, but I mean, my shape, I think is still roughly the same except for my nostrils.
It would probably snap back.
But yeah, as far as like being the same, it's not quite the same. It does get a little more squishy.
Very interesting.
That's for me. I haven't really talked to a lot of other people, but that's my experience.
Well, hopefully that explains some things for you, Will. Get you pointed in the right direction. Gaz says, "Hey Scott, love your videos.
Hi, yes, thanks.
Changed my 6-week-old septum yesterday and found it really difficult to get the jewelry in and find the hole. So do you have any tips for that?"
Practice. This is a real common thing. I tell all my clients who I pierce, if you're changing your jewelry, don't do it at 2 or 3 in the morning. Give yourself time to go see your piercer. The hole can close up kind of quick, but you're not used to where it's at. Now, when I do the piercing, typically it's more towards the tip of the nose, and a little bit lower in there, just through the sweet spot. You kind of have to search. It's tricky. The more you have it, like once you have it, you've changed it like 5 or 6 times, you're just going to be able to put it in, screw the bead on. It's no big deal. The first time, it's tricky, so you're not alone.
So it is just a practice thing.
I don't know if there's a trick to it. If you had a taper, like a metal pin that's threaded or something, you could screw that in there and use that to help find the piercing hole. Most people don't own a taper, though, but some piercing shops will sell the taper and it does make it easier to get in and out.
Interesting.
But just practice. You'll get it.
Just more practice. So... Again, what are your thoughts on using structured silver for piercing bumps or scars? Would you apply anything like that?
Structured silver? Okay.
Now, I've for the most part heard you said that additives aren't necessary, that your body will heal a small wound on its own, and you don't need to necessarily complicate things by adding a lot.
Correct. Generally, piercing bumps do go away on their own, but sometimes if you build up an excess of scar tissue, sometimes scar tissue removers can help. And I'm guessing that's probably a version of I'm not real sure. Is that like that silver thing, like stop for...
Some people like, because silver has antimicrobial effects. So there are like Band-Aids and bandages that have silver woven into them. And there are people that believe in like colloidal silver, applying it to wounds and things.
Sure.
But then there are also arguments that this is introducing heavy metals to your body. So there's arguments both ways.
I lean on being the more natural, get rid of the source of the problem, and most of the time those bumps will go away on their own. That's going to be the best bet. And if you have a little excess bump, sometimes massaging will get rid of it. I don't have a full-on opinion of that. I've never used it, so
what do you recommend for what could we do to help with the healing of an infected helix?
Okay. If you have a full-on infection, the best thing to do is to get antibiotics from a doctor, go to the doctor, have them tested, and get treated as far as that goes. In the time being, you're going to want to try to get as much of that out as possible by doing a hot compress, a hot water soak, where you actually take a cup of like distilled water, throw in the microwave, heat it up a little bit, and actually soak your ear. And that heat's going to help draw a lot of the stuff out of there.
Now, how do we know if it's really an infection? Like, what if their ear's just red? Is that infected?
No, it's really a fine line. The only true way to know if you have an infection is by getting a culture test at the doctor, and they're going to be able to test it and tell you if it's infected. Now, piercings are strange to a lot of medical professionals because most of their profession is to heal wounds closed. We're trying to heal them open. So inflammation is part of the healing process, but because we're healing it open, that inflammation is a much longer process. A lot of doctors and medical professionals will look at a piercing and see it red and saying, oh, it's infected. But we all know that piercings can stay red for quite a long time. That doesn't mean it's infected. Now, generally, if you have a lot of heat radiating out of that area, if you have thick discharge of pus that might be discolored, like a green, grayish color, you touch it and it's spitting out, that's more of a sign of infection, or a red line moving up and down that area. Definitely seek out a doctor if you have something like that right away. If it's just a little irritated, that hot compress, the wound wash spray, and don't introduce germs. Keep your hands off of it. That's the best thing I can say. But if it's infected, call your medical professional.
All right, we have a few question about stretched lobes from Dan from Virginia.
Sure.
So,
hi, Dan from Virginia.
they're doing the dead stretching, so a nice slow process.
Good.
They were at 8 millimeters for about a month, sized up to the 9 millimeter yesterday, slipped right in. They like to take the plugs out for a couple of hours after showers just to like let the lobes breathe and to massage them with some oil. Since they just sized up yesterday, how long should Dan wait before you feel like he could be able to leave those out for an hour or
That's
so?
a good question. I'm glad you said that, because I was like, if you just stretch, don't take them out, because they're irritated and there's a good chance they might want to close up faster on you. So probably a week to a couple weeks. When you stretch with a new plug, a lot of times it's really tight in there. Once it relaxes and you can just kind of move it a little bit without doing damage, then you're probably okay to take it out and put it back in. A couple hours, I don't know about. Every person's ears stretch differently, so if that's the way you normally do it, you might be able to do it, but be careful because it will shrink up on you kind of quick. And then another thing is like a month is pretty soon to be stretching. What all the training I've had says generally a minimum of 6 to 8 weeks between each stretch.
I'm sure that depends person to person, though, because like a contortion type person with super flexible skin would probably have a different experience than.
True. But I want to draw for you guys for a second here. Let me grab my pen. Where did I put my pens? There's one. All right. So when you're looking at skin, granted, it's not just like a brick wall, but in a way it is, because we got all these different like little skin cells in here. And when we stretch, things are being stretched out. But if you stretch too fast, you create a break in that wall, and that break creates scar tissue. And then you have all these little micro lines of scarring going across your ear, which is not as easy to stretch. So a natural stretch, it takes 6 to 8 weeks for all those skin cells to recuperate after being stretched and to relax. So it could be as little as a month between stretch if it's comfortable, but if it hurts, slow down. Does that make sense, Jared? What I just kind of explained there?
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
You just don't want to rip and create those huge barriers of scar tissue.
So what are your thoughts on those little plastic discs used to flatten or prevent piercing bumps?
The no-pull discs. I love the no-pull discs. I've been using them more and more recently. I was skeptical at first, but they seem to work. Typically, if you have a bump growing out of your piercing, you take the bead off, you put the little disc on there, and then it puts compression on there. And for some reason, those silicone discs really flatten it out and get rid of the bump. It seems like it's like 3 to 4 weeks minimum before the bump completely goes away, but I've had great success with them.
How do you recommend starting out stretching your ears?
Bungee cords to your shoes, and when you walk, no, Jared? No? Okay.
No.
Stretching your ears real slowly. Sometimes if you have like normal hoops, you can put an extra hoop in there, so you're wearing like maybe 2 pieces of jewelry in there. When you're looking at your jewelry studs at your home, find the one that is the thickest, wear that until it seems loose, and then you can start gauging to the next size. Now, what I mean by that is like there's a normal earlobe piercing might be a 18 gauge, a 16 gauge, and you want to put that jewelry in there until it's loose and relaxed. And when you pull down on it, you'll be able to see some light through there, and you can go up to the next size. Generally, 6 to 8 weeks minimum between each stretch like that. But yeah, find the thickest piece of jewelry, wear it for a little while, and then maybe go see a piercer and see what the next size is going to be for you.
So Eustace has a question. They have gastroparesis, which makes them throw up a lot during the day. They want an oral piercing, but want to know if that would be a bad idea.
If it's every day, I imagine it would be. I imagine it also depends on which oral piercing you're talking about. If it's a smiley, it might not be being exposed as much,
right? Or
as
under
opposed to like a straight up tongue piercing, which is constantly being
exposed.
So it depends on the piercing. I would honestly talk to your doctor about that one. That might be really bad for a piercing, and they might say definitely do not do it. They might say it's just going to be a longer healing process. I'm not sure.
Camilla says, hi, Scott and Jared. Hi.
Camilla.
Opinions on stacked lobes. They're getting quite popular, and wondering if you've done any.
I've done plenty of stacked lobes. Now, for a stacked lobe, what we're talking about is if you're looking at an earlobe piercing, and sometimes they're pierced a little bit low here. And if we do a lobe, you can also do one up above. Sometimes you've seen like little triangles. You can create different shapes. But yeah, like have 2 lowers, a couple highers. They look really, really cool that way. But a lot of times the first initial piercing needs to be pierced lower to establish the higher stacked lobe.
Victoria wants to get 2 snugs. Why are snugs so difficult to heal? And is there anything she could do to be prepared?
Just be prepared for a long healing process. The tissue right there, if you feel your cartilage, it's probably some of the most dense, thickest, hardest cartilage in your ear. Some people have really thin ones. Sometimes they're a little bit thicker, but it stays swollen a long time. And when you're sleeping on it, that's probably the first part of your ear that is even touching the pillow. So it's the easiest one to get hit, bumped, or irritated. So it just takes a long time. They're rough.
Got a question from Shane. I think we answered this last week, but he might have missed the answer. Yes.
Sure.
Does he have to stretch his PA? Because people talk about you having to.
No, you do not have to. Now, the thing is when you get a Prince Albert, which goes in the urethra and out the bottom of the head of the penis, sometimes the hole in the bottom is going to stretch out, and you can, when you're urinating, you might get a couple drops out of there. Sometimes you can turn the jewelry, twist it to the side. You can kind of plug that hole and still urinate normally. Some people have to sit down to urinate. Some people will stretch up so the jewelry's tighter. So like, oh, that way I can always stand. But you're going to have to constantly stretch and keep that hole tight. And you're eventually going to get to the point where the jewelry's just not going to fit anymore. So no, you don't have to stretch. Now, if you find it uncomfortable, like it tugs or pulls, a thicker piece of jewelry in there is more comfortable. It's like if you were to grab, if I had hair, one hair or a handful of hair, the hair handful doesn't hurt as much as that individual. So more surface area is more comfortable if that's the case. No, you don't have to stretch.
All right. So Jean has a question. Hi, my flat and conch is swelling the whole ear, and their doth had a small bump with a little bit of pus, which got better because of a sea salt mix. Do you think they should add tea tree oil at this point?
No. Let's not turn this into a chemistry experiment. The more chemicals you start adding, things are mixing with each other, and they're not doing what they're supposed to initially do. Now, first of all, I'm not a big fan of the tea tree oil. A lot of times it's too harsh. I'm a bigger fan of the emu oil, which is way more gentle and helps calm things down. Now, if you're using the sea salt water soaks, it can be done, but it's tough to do it properly. It has to be distilled or filtered water. It has to be exactly 8 ounces of water or 1 cup mixed per quarter teaspoon of sea salt, measured properly. Too much salt will cause more problems, or not enough salt doesn't do what it's supposed to. So measure properly, or just go get the wound wash spray where you can spray it on there to clean it, and just use a normal water to do a soak to help kind of draw things out of there. But the emu oil is going to be a much better thing for you, and don't over irritate it. A lot of times we try to over clean it. Let your body do its thing. Try to keep the swelling down, and hopefully that helps you out.
All right. Nicole Sims wants to know, is Jared a piercer, and what are his favorite piercings to perform or receive? I am not. I am actually just Scott's friend. Yes. I'm sort of new to the piercing world, so I'm learning a lot of this stuff right alongside you guys. So that's why I ask a lot of the questions and get the clarifications, is because we're all learning here.
Jared, so what have you had pierced before? You've had
my labret. Actually, that's it.
You've just had a labret piercing.
Just my labret piercing, yeah.
So not real experience, but being my friend, it's like he's engulfed in it. So he's always here. He hears all these questions. He helps me with all these videos. So it's almost like we're teaching as we go. So yeah, he's helping editing. So he knows a lot of these because he's been here for every single episode that we've done.
So I never push the needle, but I know a lot of this stuff just from hearing him say it so many times.
Yep. If you're around me a long time, you'll know a lot about piercings.
And Nicole also wants to know what online store we recommend for body jewelry. There isn't very good ones, so we're actually working on creating one for you right now. And that's quite a technical process, making an online store. So we are working on it.
A lot of projects on our table, but we're trying to get you some good quality jewelry where you feel safe about getting it. I say it a lot, but hopefully sooner than later, but we'll get there for you. Be patient.
All right. Hi from Wales.
Wales, welcome.
Can they get large gauge earlobe piercings if their ears have already been pierced before?
For the most part, I'm going to say yes. I've re-pierced people where they have a little scar tissue, but if you have a lot of scar tissue in there, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult to stretch because you're looking for a lot of that fresh tissue because we're making a larger incision and displacing that tissue. So if it's not much scar tissue, it should be totally fine.
All right. And we answered this already, but Camilla wants to know how many piercings I have. I just have one. I enjoyed it, but just That's where I'm at.
And Jared's one of the people where he doesn't even wear the jewelry in there, but the hole is still open. It never closed on
Even
you.
after years, I can still drop jewelry straight into it and it won't close. So
you never know. And the people who want their piercings to stay open, they don't.
Right. They'll take it out for an hour and lose it. So it's strange. Amber says they're getting her nipples pierced Sunday. Should she be scared? She hears different reviews about the pain and doesn't know what to expect.
Should you be scared? Yes. That's the normal reaction. Are you going to be okay? Absolutely. It's more scary than painful. As part of the fun of the process, as twisted as that may sound, like you're building up endorphins to help kind of deal with the pain. But bring a good support team with you. Have a good friend there. Eat a good, nice big meal before you go in, and make sure you trust your piercer. And it's not that bad. Like I tell most people, you've been pinched or bitten harder. It hurts, but it's tolerable.
Josh says hi.
Hi, Josh.
And wants to know, why is tea tree oil not something you recommend using on piercings?
I find it's way more harsh than most of the other ones. It's almost like an acid for the skin where it gets red and irritated. Now, what I've been told is you're supposed to dilute it if you were to use this 100 to 1 with water. And I don't know anyone who does that. That's how harsh it actually is. And most of the tea tree oils and things we get are meant for scents. They're not meant to go inside the body. They're not a medical grade type of material. So that's the big thing, is like, you don't know where it's coming from, how it was made, what other chemicals are in there, because it's not just pure tea tree a lot of the time. So it's pretty harsh. I'm just not a fan because it's abused more than it's used properly.
So Danny Girl wants to get a tragus piercing, but wants to know, at 38, is she too old?
Not at all. There's no age, race, class, anything that comes with piercings. If you want to get it, you should definitely do it. I think the oldest person I've ever pierced was 86 years old. We did a double nostril, and it was back when I pierced rings, but we did a ring on one side and a stud on the other. Coolest grandma ever. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So a question: does piercing over scar tissue increase the risk of failure for a future piercing? They want to get a floating navel, but fully rejected a poorly done one 4 years ago due to improper anatomy.
Okay. So scar tissue from a full-on rejection on something like a surface piercing will make it much, much more difficult for it to heal. But it kind of depends. If it was pierced, if you're trying to do a floating navel before it was too high up, if you're going deeper in there, then it might work out well for you because you're not going through all that scar tissue and you have some normal tissue in there. So it depends on from person to person situation. If it's full on rejected out and you're going through that exact same spot, the chance of rejection is definitely much higher.
Dana wants to know, is there a safe alternative to the snake eyes piercing?
Not really, because the snake eyes is on the tip of the tongue. You could always do the venom piercing, which is further back, like a normal tongue piercing, but you're gonna have two on the sides. But as far as like putting right on the tip of the tongue, it's kind of a bad idea.
How far forward can venoms be?
Generally, I tell people about a half an inch from the tip of the tongue is the furthest I'm going to go, just because your tongue's resting right up and you don't want it naturally touching the gum.
For the same reason.
You're floating.
You're keeping it away from the teeth.
Yes.
So, okay. So I guess a venom is the closest thing then.
Correct.
Just a little further.
And honestly, like when I even do my venoms, a lot of times I angle them in just a little tiny bit just to pull them away from the gums.
Right. Probably makes it more comfortable in your mouth too.
That's my goal. Yep.
All right.
But the venom piercings are straight through the muscle tissue. It is a slightly longer heel. And if you're curious about them, I think I did a whole truth on it, so you can check that out in my videos too.
Okay, Melissa got an industrial piercing after 2 places telling her ears were too small. Then a guy said that he could, but the barbell's not even exposed. It's just basically one long piercing along the edge of the ear.
Okay. Anatomy dependent piercing. Let me show you my ears that I made. This is the main reason why I made these ears, actually. Here's a natural ridge. This part of the ear sticks out pretty high. So we're not going to want to go here to here because this part is going to get in the way. Now, what they're talking about is you might be doing something like this, where you're running the longer way as long as you're kind of hitting ridges. Some people have a natural fold where the ear might be doing this and that bar might be underneath and you might not even see it. That could be also a possibility. Now, looking at another ear here, this one I made so the ear is more flat on the edge. This is a really, really bad bad idea for a normal industrial piercing, but you can do something maybe where it's a floating industrial where it comes across and bends and goes like a normal helix piercing. So you'd have to have a custom bent bar. As you see, everyone's ear shape is different. You just have to work with what you have. As far as being too small, it's not the size of your ear, it's the shape of your ear. Barbells come in many lengths, and we can find the ones that work for you. But some people have that fold, like we're saying. If your ear folds all the way over and covers the bar, kind of defeats the purpose.
Now, but like what Melissa's saying here, I think 2 people told her she did not have the correct anatomy and wouldn't do the piercing.
Okay.
And the third guy just did it. And she seems to be indicating that the bar doesn't even really exit the ear in the middle, that it's sort of like a long, super long fistula along the helix is what I'm kind of, you know what I'm saying?
I've seen that too before, where they go so close to the bar where skin has actually grown over the top. So it's almost like a double industrial.
And the bar isn't as visible. So that's a bad piercing, should be removed?
It should be removed. If you got skin and it's growing in like that, get it out, because you don't really have a chance of healing that up. Sometimes piercers will just take your money because they're like, hey, I know I can get the bar in there. And all that matters to them.
You're going to go home and they
you
get
got a
their
bar
cash.
in there. You're happy at the moment. I got your money. Moving on. You might want to find a better piercer if that's the person who did that.
And if her ear can't work for a standard industrial, you maybe recommend that floating industrial.
Correct. Find a more advanced piercer who can do something different. There's more than one industrial. Like when you're looking at the ear, everyone always thinks just the scaffold or the side-to-side industrial, but you can do a conch to conch from inside to inside. I've done a rook to a conch before, a tragus to a conch. A lot of conches can be kind of fun for the industrials.
Custom bent bars I've seen you do for special ears.
The helix, the top up here, all the way down through the conch. There's a lot of things. Find 2 points and you can connect them if you custom bend it. It's a lot of work, but find an advanced piercer if you're doing that. So,
do lip piercings hurt a lot?
No, but they're scary to get because we've all bitten our lip or our cheek so hard, and that hurts worse. It's more frustrating dealing with the week after of the swollen lip and having to eat and talk slower. Biting your lip hurts more, in my opinion.
Camilla wants to just share her trick for changing her septum jewelry is putting one finger on the exit hole to feel for the jewelry and then kind of like feeling around for...
Absolutely, because if it's in that sweet spot, you're going to be able to feel where you're at, and you might even be able to feel that fistula, a little bit of a bump. Yeah, that's awesome, Camila, right?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much. Good call.
So Mia is 13 years old and got denied a septum as the third piercing, but other shops will do it. Mm-hmm. Do you think Mia should get this done?
Here in Las Vegas, where I'm at, it's technically illegal to pierce anyone under 14 years old. So I legally couldn't do it. Now, am I opposed to it? Not necessarily. With the septum piercing, this is the most hideable piercing. It's not going to leave a scar. It's not very painful, and it's also a fast healer. So as far as minors getting piercing, I think this is a cool piercing for minors to get because it's not going to physically leave a scar.
Right. They can always take it out.
Legally, I can't do it here. And my shop has a minimum of 16 just because you have to have legal ID. And a lot of times it just creates more of a hassle trying to find an ID on someone who's like 13 or 14 years old. So, yeah.
That's the harder part.
Yeah, it really is the difficult part. But yeah, no, it's a cool piercing.
Will just wanted to say thanks for answering the question. And
my pleasure.
Be coming to Vegas, actually, to tour the locations from Fallout New Vegas and probably going to come see you and get a piercing while they're here.
Please do. It would be an honor to pierce you.
All right. So
that's a cool reason to come out to Vegas to tour for the Fallout.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. They recreated a lot of interesting locations in the game. Have you played?
Yeah, I've never played, but I watched a lot of friends play it, and it's a fun game to watch too. So super cool.
Burra Train asks a similar question. What's the youngest a piercer will be confident to do a piercing on the face? So like, do you like to do, I think they're asking like on minors, on like face piercings on kids, or do you think it's a bad idea?
I won't do it. I don't want to leave a big scar on someone who hasn't chosen what they want to do with their life. Even getting an earlobe piercing sometimes can leave a scar. It's a little bit more socially acceptable here, so that's why I'll do that. But as far as like eyebrow piercings, things like that, 16's the youngest I feel comfortable. Now, every piercer has different ideas of what's morally right or wrong. If the parent says okay and the child says okay, and it's, who am I to say? But it's what I feel comfortable with. So, yeah, that's my opinion. 16 is about the youngest I would do. Like we were talking about earlier, septum's not going to leave a scar. I would feel comfortable going a little bit younger on that one. But here at my shop, 16 is the youngest we do.
So Zayden wants to know how long to wait before you can wear dangly jewelry after getting lobes pierced.
Okay. Be careful with the dangly jewelry you're talking about, because if there's a lot of weight on there, you can actually pull the earring down and you'd want to stretch it up to support any sort of dangles. Now, if you're talking about just adding a charm, once it's healed up, you should be totally fine, generally 6 to 8 weeks.
Julian wants some advice on septum stretching, especially from the 8 to the 6, where that difference is so big.
Yes. Time. Generally a minimum 6 to 8 weeks between stretch. I'm not sure what you're wearing for jewelry. Some people will put like a little plug in there or real lightweight and nothing that moves around. It's going to take longer for it to stretch and naturally. But if you put a circular barbell and something a little weight and it's moving around, it will naturally stretch a little bit faster. Sometimes stacking septums, you're able to put in like your normal one and put a smaller one underneath it, like a little 16 gauge in with it. And that might be enough to get you to that next size too.
Opinion on mandible piercings?
I've had them done. I don't condone them. I think they're very dangerous, and I've had zero luck healing this up, so not a fan of them.
So Amanda has something stretched to a 00, and it will not stretch any further.
Yes.
Are there any recommendations on how to get it more stretched?
Patience. Some people will say like, well, every other piercing stretched up to this point, and after 2 months, I should be able to get here. It might take 6 months for everything to relax and calm down a little tiny bit. Depends on the piercing you're talking about. Sometimes there's just no room. My septum, I was able to get to a 0. I couldn't go past it because the cartilage and everything was just so tight. It didn't feel comfortable. If it's an earlobe, I've had friends who've been piercers for many, many years, 20 years, and they couldn't go past a 0 gauge because their ear wouldn't stretch, and they actually had to do a little relief cut. So finding a body modification artist for that. But patience is generally the key. And maybe start using the tape method. Real little Teflon tape wraps every couple days or every week or so. That might be the method for you too.
Pickle's excited about the next episode of What Should I Get Pierced? Wants to know when it's coming. We're working on it.
Yeah, we have it recorded, I believe, but I don't know. Do we have the next one recorded?
I don't know.
We're getting stacked up, yeah. I think coming out tomorrow is going to be another Whole Truth.
And then probably next week, maybe.
Probably the week after that, we'll get another What Should I Get Pierced? Yes.
All right. Pooh Bear wants to know, is it necessary to ask for an orbital lobe piercing, or is it fine to just get 2 separate lobe piercings and later put in a ring?
You should ask for it, because if you go too close together, you might not be able to have a ring size that'll actually fit properly. You have to keep in mind your ears are so thick, and that's going to be like the minimum size you'd be able to put in for a ring. Then you have to do that spacing that way too. So you want it to look symmetrical. You want them to be the same angle. So tell your piercer and plan it out. Hey, quick question for you guys. I was just kind of thinking about this. How many piercings do you guys have? Do you guys have a lot of piercings like me? Let me know in the comments how many piercings you currently have. I'm really kind of curious about this.
All right.
So
we'll have to hurry up and get to real time so we can answer them.
Yeah.
How do you go about finding a good piercer? Melissa wants to know. What kind of questions do you ask to help weed out bad piercers? Because they're in Indiana and having difficulty finding a good one.
First thing is go to Yelp. Go to Yelp. I know there's some good and some bad stuff on Yelp, but in general, you'll get an idea of one of the better piercers in that area. Also look at the Google reviews. That can also help. And word of mouth. Start finding someone who has a lot of cool mods. Hey, where do you go? Because you're not going to get a lot of cool piercings and whatnot from just any random, hole in the wall shop. So
Mini Piggy wants to know what to do. 7 weeks ago, they got 4 patches of piercings and they still hurt. Is almond oil and lavender good for freshly made piercings?
No. Most of the time, those oils will cause more problems because they're not meant to go inside the body. A lot of times they're fragrance oils. The best thing to do is let your body heal. Don't add other things to it. If you want to kind of help promote the healing, be healthier. Multivitamins, maybe zinc supplements, but don't put things on your piercing. The only thing I ever really suggest using is a wound wash spray, because your body's made up of salt water, and this is just going to soften the crusties and also help get rid of those crusties so it doesn't cause extra irritation. Other than that, try to leave it be. Let your body heal it up on its own.
So Bryony from the UK wants to know what wound
Hi,
wash
Bryony.
spray you recommend, or are they all more or less the same thing?
They are more or less the same thing, or should be. It should be sterile saline solution. Now, some companies will add extra enzymes and chemicals to help promote healing. I'm not a fan of those. Just look for the real basic ones. The one I love is Neil Med, and you want to get the fine mist. Now, when you have like a squirt bottle, you're going to have the full stream, and you have the one that has that gentle mist. The gentle mist is what I like for people to use. So find one that's a gentle mist, and that should work just fine for you.
So the Fearless Maniac just got a nostril piercing.
Fearless Maniac. Awesome.
How do they minimize scarring on the nose in case they decide they don't want to wear it anymore? Does wearing a smaller gauge nose ring help?
A little bit. When you're talking 20 gauge, 18 gauge, or even up to a 16, you're dealing with fractions of a millimeter. So it's not going to matter that much. What matters with scarring is how much you're picking at it, bumping it, causing that extra irritation. So keep it clean, keep the crusties off there, and you should have very minimal scar. And if it does start to get that bump or whatever, and you're worried about it, if you take the piercing out, it goes away almost right away.
So Denise got her doth pierced, and it's at an 18 gauge, but most of the jewelry seems to be a 16.
Correct.
What can we do?
Sometimes you can stretch it up a little bit in the future. It's not a huge jump, but you need to be fully healed up. So I would say probably 6 to maybe 8 or 9 months before you even think about stretching it. And once your jewelry's healed and it moves freely on its own, you don't have crusties on there, you could try to do that. Go to a piercer, see if they can get it up to a 16, and that might feel more comfortable for you anyways.
Maggie wants some advice on how to properly stretch ears. Messed up stretching them as a teenager and have a bump of scar tissue on the one ear. So how can it be handled better this time?
Massaging your ears on a regular basis. I like cocoa butter. You can take that in there. It kind of leaves a little moisturizing in there, and just break up that scar tissue as best you can, and take your time and don't hurt yourself. Massaging is the key on this one.
Does a nostril piercing leave a scar?
Yes, all piercings can leave a scar, and plan on it being a scar. Sometimes they're little tiny little bumps, or like little blackheads or little dots, but it will leave some sort of scar.
So when Dana got their last labret piercing, the back kept getting caught on their teeth. Mm-hmm. Was this improper placement, or was the bar just too long?
Probably too long for the initial piercing because you swell. Generally, after like 3 to 5 days piercings, the swelling goes down, but we suggest at least a couple weeks to a month before you downsize. So you just got to eat slower, make sure it doesn't get caught on there. Once you downsize, it should be nice and flush against your lip, and you shouldn't have that problem.
Will wants to know what I look like because he's trying to put a face to the voice. We'll get a camera 2 going here at some point.
Real soon. I will say this. Jared has a real awesome mustache.
Oh, this guy.
Just painting a picture.
Thanks.
Painting a picture for people here. Yeah.
All right. So, hi from Italy.
Hi.
Thank you for everything, and your videos are super interesting.
Thank you.
Just curious, how long should we wait between one piercing and another?
It depends on where you're getting the piercings. If you're getting one piercing here and then one on the other ear, you could do it 2 separate days, as long as you are comfortable sleeping on your back. Now, if you're piercing one here on your earlobe and you go in the next day for it right next to it, your piercing is going to be swollen, irritated, it's going to be more painful. Wait till it heals up. That's kind of how that works. I generally tell people not to have more than 4, 5 piercings healing on someone at once, maybe 6 at max if they're real easy, like earlobe piercings. But too many piercings is going to prolong the healing process and take longer for it to heal, and more prone to infections. So minimize the amount of piercings, and as long as it's not swollen, go for it.
So Camille wants to know, is PTFE and Bioplast good for healing? Because some of the piercers in their town say yes, some say absolutely not. What's up?
If you talk to a lot of different piercers, you're going to hear different opinions on all sides of the spectrum. I am not a fan of PTFE or any of that stuff because it's high maintenance, and I don't feel the plastic was meant to go inside the body long term. Sometimes they're made for retainers, for going for medical things like that, or to hide your piercing, but I'm not a fan of healing it. I like the implant grade titanium, straight up. Yeah, implant grade titanium, gold, or niobium. Those are mine.
Hello from Australia.
Hi, Australia.
How do you measure your conch piercing for a snug fitting ring?
you almost need to go to your piercer and have it checked, because the angle of your conch piercing is going to be determined on how big the ring is. Theoretically, if it's pierced perpendicular, you measure from the closest hole to the outside of your ear to the outside edge. If you measure a 1/2 inch or 12 millimeters or however big, that's the size of the ring. But if it's pierced at an angle and it comes out further, you might have to go a little bit bigger to make it around your ear. So you almost need to go talk to your piercer and see what's going to work best for you. Or if you have one around the house, put it in and figure out how much is sticking out and subtract that.
Hi, Summer. He actually, at the beginning of the stream, told his story of how he got into piercings.
Yes.
If you go back and watch the stream, you'll see that. And advice on how to get a career in tattoo and piercing is get an apprenticeship, right, Scott?
Yeah. An apprenticeship is the way to go about this. There are schools and seminars and things like that you can go to, but these don't replace an apprenticeship. So you need to find a piercer who will teach you how to do this. It's a real tricky question, because like finding a qualified piercer who actually knows the proper information to teach you is the tricky part. So find a qualified piercer. You need to get pierced by them. We get asked all the time to do apprenticeships. We don't just pull any random person who asks. So make yourself worthy, make yourself look like you love piercings, get pierced by them, ask them a lot of questions. And that's the easiest way to get your foot in the door.
So Bradley is wanting to get an industrial, and their piercer says their ear is good. What do you think the pain of an industrial is on a scale from 1 to 10?
Watch my video. Check out the painometer. It depends on your piercer, the quality of needles they're using. Is it externally threaded jewelry? If they're piercing at the right angles, how fast and experienced they are. There's a lot of variables. It's 2 cartilage piercings. They hurt a little bit, but it's not that bad. The part that sucks about this is it's a long healing process. You're not sleeping on it. If you're wearing masks, they could get caught on there. So the aftercare and the healing process is the rough part, in my opinion.
Melissa, if you're still here, you asked about sending that picture of your ear. Go ahead and send it. Send it to piercingwithscott@gmail.com. And if we get a chance, we'll have him take a look at that and either on stream or after let you know.
Sure.
What is the best material for stretched, like they say for gauges, which we actually would call stretched lobes? Is there good materials and bad materials?
Yes. Some people, you can't really stretch with a lot of organics that easily, because a lot of times they're real porous. But once you're up to that size, like if it falls into place and you want to put a wood plug in there, it might be totally comfortable for you, and that's totally fine to use. But some people have allergic reaction to certain woods and certain materials. Some people are allergic to nickel, and there's a lot of nickel in some of the surgical stainless steel. So it may seem like good metals, but you may have problems with them. Now, as far as stretching, if it was up to me, glass. I love stretching with glass. It's so smooth. No one's really allergic to it. You can buy them in different lengths for some of the plugs if you have thicker lobes or if you have thinner ones. Glass is my favorite. Second favorite is going to be implant grade titanium.
So Amber asks, do you pierce tongues from the bottom or the top? Because they mostly see in videos it happening from the top, but their piercer did it from the bottom and very slowly.
Okay, my opinion on that, and very slowly, I'm sorry. It's not that painful of a piercing, but I think it has to do with the height of the piercer. I really, really do. Oh. Because I'm taller, I'm always looking down. I would have to bend down to pierce from the bottom up. So for me, I put the clamp on the tongue and I pierce top down. Some piercers do freehand, and if you're doing the freehand, I think those are almost always bottom up. So there's no right or wrong. But if you're a slightly shorter piercer, trying to get, trust your dots. If you're looking at the bottom, I want to see where it comes out. You try. So I think that's pretty much what it comes down to.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
John wants to know, is the Medusa okay for a first piercing, or would you pick something less painful?
No, get what you want. Pain shouldn't really be a factor. Sometimes it's more scary going in to get that piercing, but they're all still tolerable. We do things all the time. We stub our toes, we survive from those pains. And sometimes those pains are more painful than the actual piercing. So get what you want.
If an upper lobe still hurts after a couple of months to remove and put in and out, does that indicate a problem, or is that normal?
Sometimes it indicates a problem. It could be the jewelry you're wearing, the quality of the metal, the size of the jewelry. if you're sleeping on it, is it one side or both sides? If it's one side, it might be because you're sleeping on it, you're constantly bumping that side for some reason. So you got to figure out what it is. And if you're changing your jewelry all the time, stop. Maybe just leave one piece of jewelry in and allow it to heal up a little bit more.
And Victoria wants to know if you recommend a clicker and a fresh doff.
I am not a fan of clickers or any sort of seam rings in a fresh piercing. There's one exception, and basically what I'm talking about is, for those of you who don't know, a clicker is basically a ring where it has a hinge and this part pushes down to kind of draw like that, to kind of create. See how it can go up and down. Now a seam ring is a ring where it has a little seam in the middle here, and you have to twist to get it in and put it back in. Now, the only time here when you're dealing with a clicker is if you had something like this, where there's a larger area where the seam or the gap here can't be pulled into the piercing. So if you have a large stopper here, then it could be okay. Now, my only issue here is a lot of times these sizes here aren't quite big enough to accommodate room for swelling. So that makes me nervous about using it. But if you have enough room for swelling and you're not going to pull the seam or that gap in the middle of the piercing, then I'm okay with it.
We have caught up to when you asked people about how many piercings they have.
Yes. Okay, cool.
So with 10, we have a lot of enthusiasts here. We have 10 piercings, 7. Bradley has 3, planning on a 4th, 6. Amy has has 8, all in the ears. Jenny Media has 10.
18 piercings so far is the biggest. 17.
7
9.
and 2.
16, mostly ears. Wow, all over. So it's not like single piercing people. So all you guys are enthusiasts and you really love piercings.
All right. So there's a couple of questions in here too. Let's
yeah.
Celine wants to know, what kind of piercings can you recommend that don't hurt very much on the ears?
On the ears, okay. A piercing to piercing is going to hurt a little tiny bit. Earlobe's probably one of the easiest you'll ever get. Now, as far as cartilage piercings go, they're all going to feel a little painful to initially get, but it's the healing process what matters. If you get inner cartilage like a rook, a doff, or a conch, a lot of times those are protected and they're an easier, less painful piercing to heal than the outside rim like the helix or the forward helix. So inner cartilage heal better than the outer cartilage, but if you're looking for the least painful, earlobe.
Now, would you say the pain of healing a piercing up is more than the pain of the actual moment of the piercing?
I fear aftercare more than the initial piercing. Even though that initial piercing is scary to get, it's just, yeah.
The actual pain is the next few weeks.
Yeah, sleeping on it, pulling crusties in, someone giving you that hug and bumping your ear on a fresh piercing, and you want to get so mad at them. You can't, that's the rough part about piercing. It's like getting to that healed point. And that's almost with any piercing on the entire body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just that usually that after the heal is the worst part.
The scariest thing that ever happened to me, I don't condone it, but I had the mandible piercing. If I ever gave someone a hug and they'd pull away and they're like their shoulder or something, their shirt would get caught on my mandible and I'd have to hold them and try to scary, because
like you get tangled up like on their shirt or their hair or something.
Don't even think about it. And sometimes it's like those things happen. So that's what scares me, not the initial piercing.
So Lulu already has nose rings on both sides and wants a septum, but always has a runny nose. Do you feel like that would be irritating to the septum?
No, I mean, it's not really much different than the nostrils. You get used to it because if you have runny nose, you're blowing your nose, you're like, that's always going to get irritated, but it's something new that you get used to. Now, if you're in the middle of a cold and it's constantly runny, sometimes get that circular barbell, flip it up, and you won't even know it's there. Now, the issue I have with a runny nose and a septum ring is when it comes down, sometimes snot will follow the ring and you don't feel it till it's dripping. And then you might have that little creates for an awkward moment. So flip it up if that's the case.
Okay. Fernando says hello from, I believe, Brazil.
Hi, Fernando.
It's a very tiny flag on my screen, but it looks like a Brazilian flag.
Okay.
Just got a doff. I'm a nurse, and I think wearing the stethoscope is kind of hurting it. I got bumps on both sides of the skin. Will it heal nice, or what do we do here?
Heal nice, not perfectly. It's going to take longer for it to heal. I wish I had the exact answer for you here, but I believe the stethoscope, you can buy different earbuds, ear tops for it, whether it's foam, whether it's silicone, maybe bigger or smaller. But yes, those stethoscopes can cause problems pressing up against it. If you can find a better way to go about it, maybe go a little looser in the ear. I'm not saying don't do your job, but it will cause irritation over time. So find a better alternative if you can. If the swelling's gone down and you can maybe go to a smaller ring, maybe that might be the answer for you too.
Carle thinks that the saline solution they're using to clean their eyebrow piercing is drying the skin out. What do you think?
Look on the bottle of saline solution and see what the percentage is. I think it's a 0.07 saltwater solution or something like that. Sometimes people add extra things in there, and that could be doing it. It could be climate too.
Could be overuse, maybe
overuse.
Too much cleaning.
If you're piercing swelling, your skin's going to kind of have that dried look on there as well. So just make sure it's a good quality one. It doesn't have extra stuff in there as well. I have heard this before. I think a lot of it's from the swelling.
So do some piercing bumps just never go away?
If some piercing bumps can become permanent if you leave them there long enough, because that's just that buildup of scar tissue. If you get rid of the source of the problem, most of the time those bumps will go away. But if you're lazy about it and like, just whatever, it'll go away, and you never get rid of the source of the problem, you're creating a huge scar in your body, and it probably won't go away for that reason. If you take the piercing out and use scar tissue remover like Mederma, a lot of times that does help.
So Katarina has had a nostril piercing for half a year now, was totally healed. Lost the ring though, couldn't buy a new one and had to leave it out for 2 days. Mm-hmm. Putting the new ring in hurt, it bled, and now it's inflamed.
Yes.
Why?
Okay, so you healed a tube of scar tissue, and when you take your piercing out, that tube of scar tissue is shrinking because we never removed tissue from the initial piercing. So you had to stretch it back open. Now that fistula, that tube of scar tissue probably ripped if it was bleeding, so now it's technically an open wound again. Your body recognizes this, and you probably have 3 to 5 days of swelling because it's trying to push out this foreign object, and you kind of started a semi-healing process again. So go back to the wound wash, maybe some sort of anti-inflammatories to get the swelling down. It should be a faster healing process, but you're going to have to clean it again.
Greetings from Norway. Getting
Norway.
A nipple pierced in a few days. Any tips on what to expect?
Yeah, it's scarier than it is more painful. So go in there with a good friend. It's going to be a sharp pinch, but you're going to be just fine, and it's totally worth it. I have mine pierced. I'll have mine pierced probably till the day I die. That's a promise.
So what can go wrong when you're piercing an eyebrow?
What can go wrong? If you have an inexperienced piercer, they may pierce it too shallow, at a wrong angle where it might not look good. Maybe if the piercer's not using the right tools and they lose the transfer, they can lose the connection in the middle. That's why you want to find a quality piercer. Infected, if they're not using sterile tools and implements. There's a bunch of things. So you want to go to the right piercer. If you go to the right piercer, all those problems are pretty much eliminated.
You're just relying on them to do their job and take care of it.
That's why you don't want to pierce at home. Like all those things I was just talking about, you're going to have more scarring, chance of infection, chance of allergic reactions to certain metals because you're using wrong implements.
And it just won't look good. Like when you see an eyebrow piercing on someone and it's super cute, that's because the piercer put it in exactly the right place.
The right spot. Placement's everything. Everything. This is not just eyebrow piercing. This is everything. Even an earlobe. Oh, it's just an earlobe. It's not a big deal. No, placement's everything. I can't tell you how many people I struggle trying to get dots to make it look to match up with this crazy mess they already have. Yeah, you don't think about it, but look at people's earlobes. You'll notice not a lot of people have straight ones because, I just had it done by so-and-so. It's just earlobes.
And it wasn't.
It's just earlobes. I hear that all the time. They're not just earlobes.
You wear that scar forever.
Yes.
So hello from Denmark.
Hi, Denmark.
Thoughts on healing inner ear piercings like tragus doth, antitragus rook if you wear in-ear headphones like iPods? Is that compatible? Does that work?
No, it's really not. Sometimes when you're wearing earphones, earbuds, things like that in your ear, it may not hurt. But if you put So if you put a piece of jewelry in, say like the rook here, and you have something that's pressing, it's changing the shape of it, it's being irritated and shifted and has to move back and forth. You're pulling crusties in, and it needs to sit in a natural position. So if you have a tragus piercing and it's being pushed out, it will cause a bump. May not hurt at the time. You won't know until you have the bump, and then you have several steps you have to take to get rid of the bumps. So try to avoid it as best you can. If you can wear over the ear earphones, sometimes even some real soft ear foam buds to put in there. It sucks. Some people only wear the one, so you're not hearing stereo. Yep.
So it's an interesting question. I don't know if I fully understand it, but if the piercer rerouted the piercing immediately after doing it, can that really prolong the process of healing? And are there any concerning things that I should be aware of septum? So I think they're asking, like, you say, if you pierce something crooked and then immediately re-pierce it, is that significantly increasing your healing process there, or is that okay?
No, not really. It depends on the actual piercing. I mean, things close up so quick. I've actually re-pierced septums in the same sitting if I got it crooked or we weren't happy with the results. A lot of times there's a larger area. I will go slightly above it or below it or in front of it. I mean, if it wasn't right, I'm going in a different spot. So it's not that big of a deal, and it doesn't really affect the actual healing process. You might have a little scab next to it, but like for a septum, but you're not going to notice that scab on the inside. So it's not going to affect the healing process. It's just going to have that little extra scab there.
And just a similar soreness overall, you guess.
Yeah. Not the end of the world. Not a big deal.
Okay, so Ray got an industrial pierced about 2 months ago and still has bumps on both sides. Cleans it 2 times a day, every day, and doesn't sleep on it or play with it. What can we do to get rid of this irritation?
Okay. Now, if your industrial was pierced at wrong angles, you might not be able to get rid of the bumps. My question to you would be did you do something or anything in the beginning which might have caused the bumps? Did you get hit in the ear, wear a helmet, something that would have caused that irritation? If they just naturally happened and you didn't bump or irritate it, it might be pierced at different angles. Now, if I was like the angles here, if one of these angles was pierced at this angle and one was pierced at this angle, and you're trying to twist it to get it back into that position so the bar fits, you're not going to get rid of those bumps. So maybe go talk to your piercer, see what they say about the bumps. If you notice the bumps are all on the top side or both on the bottom side, that means your tissue is being contorted that way. If it's just kind of going around the bar, it's a lot of times you can get rid of that. It's kind of hard to describe that one. But yeah, go talk to your piercer about it.
All right, so I've had a septum piercing and I'm looking at a snake bite piercing. How do you feel about snake bite piercings as a second piercing?
Cool. Snake bites, you're talking one on each side of the lip here. They swell symmetrically. That's one thing I like. It's like if you're getting a single lip, you might have a fat lip on one side, but during the healing process, it swells symmetrically. I think they look really cool. I love balanced symmetrical piercings. Biting your lip hurts more than the piercing does. Just downsize your jewelry so you don't do damage to your teeth. Great piercings.
All right. Hello from Pennsylvania.
Hi, Pennsylvania.
Now, next question. How long does a vertical labret take to heal? Got mine about 2 months ago, and the top of my lip is taking a long time to heal, and they get a little bump on there happening sometimes.
Okay. Did you downsize your jewelry yet? Typically, when we do this piercing, we're going to give you a little extra room for a vertical labret, and then after about a month or so, if it seems like it's mostly healed, you can downsize. If you have the bump because the bar is too long and it's moving back and forth, downsize, and that might get rid of that bump. You can also use things like emu oil to kind of help calm and soothe it. If you eat a lot of hot, spicy foods, things like that, that might have been irritating it. You just got to find the source of the problem. But if the bar is way too long, shorten that up, and that could help you out.
Okay, so earlier we spoke to Melissa, who got a industrial piercing.
Yes.
A couple of people told her ear was too small. The third guy wanted that money so bad that he made it happen.
Yes.
Let's take a look at the pictures of her ear.
Cool.
So,
okay.
This angle, it's kind of hard to tell what you're seeing, but it doesn't even really exit in the middle. Like, look at
Not
this
at
one.
all. I can't see the bar at all. That needs to be taken out.
It's literally completely enclosed inside the ear here.
Don't ever go to that piercer again. Now, if I were to do this piercing, can we go back to that other picture?
The first one?
Yeah.
Also, take a look at this third one. The question she has overall is, is a normal scaffold industrial possible on her ear, and this guy just did it wrong? Or would you say that she's a better candidate for a floating or some kind of a mod on that?
She has a tricky ear to pierce because that center part of her helix, like,
is tall.
It's tall.
Like,
so
this area.
Yes. Now, if it were me, what I would do is I would bend the bar like so. Okay. So the first front part of her ear right here is going to be straight across, and it's going to be kind of angled out, kind of like this, away from the ears so it doesn't touch that center part. And once it comes around this corner is when I would throw this curve in here, so this curve could kind of bring it back down. Now, when you're looking at the ear, you're not going to see the bead exactly right on the side here and here. You'll see the bead here, like the front, like a normal, but it might come out a little further on the back here. Now, from the side, you're still going to see it, but from the front, it doesn't look like a normal industrial. So it's just a slight bend. That's what I would do. And that would just kind of hug around and bring it back down for
without pressing in on this.
Without pressing. If you did the piercing and pressed up against there, you're going to have some massive, massive scar tissue. But that's what I personally would do. You might be able to find a piercer and do the same thing and maybe do a right angle instead of that curve, which would be more like one of these to kind of shoot out and then kind of shoot it back down. I like the curve because people can't tell it's as modified. And looking straight on, it might look more like a normal industrial, but then you can always tell people, no, it was custom bent for my ear.
So you're saying for this ear we're looking at right here, take that out, and it's going to need to be sort of custom bent. A standard bar isn't going to successfully go straight through that ear.
Now, my opinion, if you came to me with this ear, what I would ultimately want to do is that top bead, but we're looking at right here at the top of her ear, what I would do, kind of come back here for a second, is the piercings up here like this, kind of going across. Use the piercing going straight down into the conch. So you have a vertical from the helix to the conch, because it looks like this helix folds over and there's enough tissue to be able to have a vertical industrial. That you're set up for really well, it looks like. And that would be your best option for an industrial. And you don't see those every day. So you're looking for something a little different, that might be an option for you.
All right.
Thanks for sending that in. That was really, really fun. That was,
absolutely. It's cool. It's cool to kind of get a picture of what we're talking about. Bridget got her nipples pierced in September, and they seem to be healing okay. But recently, there's been tiny blister-like bumps filled with pus that pop and then scab over.
Yes.
What does this mean?
Now, in my experience, sometimes crusty hair, dirt, something might have gotten pulled inside there, and your body creates little tiny cysts and tries to push them out. The best thing to do is not pop them, not try to irritate them, but just use a wound wash spray, or in the shower, let the hot water try to help draw it out. You got to be gentle with them. In my experience, whenever I've gotten blisters or little bumps like that, they come like 2 to 3 times before they completely stop. They kind of come out, pop, and then finally it goes away, and then it goes away for good. So if it's happened a couple times, you might be at the tail end of it, but it's not the end of the world. Just don't pick at them.
So how long will a septum piercing be tender when bumped? Inward pressure on the tip of the nose still hurts months later.
It might be rubbing directly up against your cartilage. If your septum got pierced and it went right through the cartilage, that's probably what you're feeling. It might be on a little nerve or something. Normally, that's not the case. So if it hurt real bad when you initially got it pierced, I would guess it's up against the cartilage. It's the only thing I can think of. Normally, that only lasts a couple days to a week or so before you can press down or up and not have any sort of pain with it.
Fresh nostril piercings, 2 months old, keep getting bumps. No pain, but they sometimes bleed a little. Tips?
Okay. I want to go back to the last question. Sometimes septums also can have bumps on the piercing, and you might not even be able to see it in there. So if you're feeling it, you might be pressing it against the bump. So look inside your nose to see if you have a bump in the septum. That could have been another thing. I just thought of that after. Toss that out there.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. One more time with the question, Jared, please.
So fresh nostril piercings, 2 months old, and bumps keep happening. They don't hurt at all, but they'll bleed a little bit sometimes.
Depending on your aftercare, don't put any oils, things like that. Just the wound wash spray. Sometimes we catch towels and shirts on it, and it can get extra irritated. Be gentle, clean it once a day and try to leave it be, and it will eventually stop. A lot of times we're irritated and we don't even know when we're doing it. Sometimes it's pillowcases getting caught on there, or just a quick little, oh, ow, that hurt. And you don't realize it, but that is several steps backwards too. So patience. It does take some time for these to heal, and try not to irritate it. Emu oil can really calm it down if the bumps keep persistently happening. And if you have a ring in there, switch to a stud. I didn't even think about saying that, but rings are notorious for having those bumps in initial piercing. So you should only have a ring in there, or
only a stud.
A stud in there. Words, all these words just come out of my mouth.
Words. What's the most painful facial piercing you've had, not counting the stretching?
My nostrils, hands down. Now, big disclaimer, I did not have my nostril pierced at a typical 18 gauge. Mine was pierced one at an 8 gauge and one at a 6 gauge. And displacing, pushing all that cartilage out of the way was brutally painful. And I do believe I have a story time talking about my nostril piercing. So if you want to check it out, it's worth checking out. It's a cool, fun story.
What type of jewelry should be worn in a helix? Can it be a normal earlobe earring, or does it have to be a flatback?
I suggest a flat back. The earlobe piercing you're talking about is called like a butterfly back, and I am not a fan of that at all. Let me see if I can draw that real quick for you. Basically, ooh, fancy diamond. All right. So basically what you got is you have the pin right here, and then you have these two little circles which put pressure to hold on to the pin. And this here with these big loops have a bunch of bacteria. You're going to see crusties and stuff stick inside there. So these turn into bacteria traps. I'm never a fan of these. Plus, when you're wearing this pin through here, a lot of times you feel this pin on the back of your ear. So if you're sleeping on, it's poking the back of your ear, and it doesn't work very well at all. So when you're wearing a flat disc on the back, the crusties are easy to wipe away, it's comfortable to sleep on, and a far better situation.
And that guy who butchered Melissa's industrial, said he had 31 years of experience, and that's what he did.
31's of experience of tattooing, maybe.
Okay, so a lot of times,
tattooers and piercers, and they've never had proper, they kind of mix and match back and forth. 31 years and you're doing stuff like that, I don't believe you.
Just doesn't make sense.
31 years maybe in the industry, and you've done a couple piercings. But yeah, to go horizontal through there, that's horrible. That piercing is going to be so painful.
It's not going to heal.
Yeah.
Terrible.
I wonder what the Yelp ratings are on that guy.
Good question. He should get another bad one.
For real, the people need to know.
Is it common to get small bumps on vertical labret piercings? It seems like skin buildup, but it's weird looking.
Yes, because small bumps, I'm guessing just like the little hypertrophic scarring, little bump on one side, if that's what they're talking. There's a lot of movement in this area. So if forks, silverware, drinks, when you're drinking some things, are constantly hitting it. So during initial healing process, bumps can happen, but find comfortable jewelry. Maybe if you had some sort of a prong or fancy gem top on there that's irritating, that could cause the bumps. So it is common, but once it's healed up, they're generally not that bad.
So we've got a 2-week-old labret piercing, and when they move it, a tiny bit of white liquid comes out. Is this normal?
Yep.
Okay.
You're still in the healing process. A tiny bit of white liquid, you said?
White.
Yeah. A lot of times plasma mixes in with the dead skin cells, and that's just kind of pushing out there. White's not a scary amount. A scary color. It's the yellowish to greenish to grayish in color. When it's thick discharge, just like you touch it and it's oozing out, that's a problem. A little bit, totally normal. You're healing. That's a good thing.
So what do you think about the current trend of younger people piercing themselves at home?
It's not a current trend. I've been in this industry since 1994, and there's always been kids piercing themselves at home. It's not a good idea. The chance of infection is extremely high. Hepatitis can live several weeks without a host. So if you're not afraid of bloodborne pathogen diseases, not afraid of getting allergies to certain metals because you're using the wrong metals, if you're not afraid of having a whole bunch of scars to get the right angle because it never happens the first time.
No, and they won't even redo it. It'll just be wrong.
It'll just
have
be wrong,
ugly
and it doesn't
forever.
look right, and no one's ever going to really tell you have an ugly piercing. So go get it done right.
It's true. No one will ever tell you.
Yeah.
All right. So Brooke has a pierced snug, and it's being really difficult. Any suggestions about a snug, or are they just difficult?
I tell everyone who gets a snug, expect 6 months to a year. A year to fully heal up. It's going to stay swollen most of that time. So wound wash spray, if you got bumps, maybe the emu oil, and don't lay on it. It just takes time. If you have way too long of a bar and it's moving, maybe shorten it up. Hopefully it's a bar, not a ring. Yeah.
Random question. Dana wants to know what your big fake ears are made of.
Jared, you can probably answer this better than I can.
Yes, we made them ourselves. The process was we made them out of clay, and then we made a stone mold out of the clay, on top of the clay, and then poured it out of silicone, available from Smooth On, which is a company that sells all kinds of like foam. So they're different materials.
Now, these two are pretty hard. You can tell they're pretty solid. But this third one we made, we tried experimenting, and we did the silicone, and we kind of rolled it around in the mold. And then once it kind of created a shell, we actually poured foam on the inside. So this one's definitely a lot softer and more flexible. So we're trying that. That's why you have a little bit of rips in here. They're kind of experiments in the process, but they're a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
And we learned it all on YouTube. So you can look up
YouTube.
Mold making, silicone molds, and just get lost in that rabbit hole.
I was just like, I want some big ears for examples to show why industrials work, why they don't work, and
I mean, it's tough to explain to someone when you tell them, no, you can't have an industrial. And they're like, what do you mean?
Like,
I got an
your
ear.
ear is flat like this. I need one that has the ridge like this. So having different shape ears can really, different molds, obviously, because no one has the same ears.
Absolutely. So, tragus piercings and earphones.
Bad idea. It doesn't work. They're going to put pressure on there. Once you're healed, you're totally fine. If you're using the over-ear earphones, those work much better than the earbuds that go in the ears. Sometimes you can find a different foam, different type of insert that fits in your ear better, but if it's putting pressure on there, it's going to cause bumps.
Cute Flute got a helix piercing last week, and they're not sure if it's pierced right because it's quite angled up. And they want to wear a ring in the future, and told them this. Is it possible it's just swollen and looks crooked, or?
Probably not. I mean, they swell a little bit, but it doesn't swell that crooked. Now, the problem is if you're looking at the ear and they're saying that the piercing should be perpendicular like this, but theirs might be like this, is pointing up. Now, if you do this with the piercing, that means a majority, like when you wear the ring, it's pointing up like that, it's going to be sitting at a weird angle, and most of it's going to be kind of hanging off the back, I believe. So
it'll just change the angle that the ring
sits. The angle of the ring. If you want the ring to sit like a natural fold like this, then it should be perpendicular. Otherwise, the ring's going to be kind of sitting at a weird angle like that.
Might be more visible. It depends. It could look better that way, but it's a different look.
It's a different look. So if it bothers you, maybe go talk to your piercer, or you can even take, like, if you have any capture bead rings at home, a single ring with a bead on there, take the bead off, and you can kind of hold it up and kind of see the angle you want, and you'll be able to tell if it's not the right thing. Don't heal it up if it's the wrong angle and you're not going to be happy. Take it out and start over now before it's too late.
So we have a viewer here who's in love with the doff piercing, but afraid that they don't have the right anatomy for it. It's sort of an opinion question, but what do you think the best ear piercing is?
Okay. Some people don't have the anatomy for a doff piercing. I had to turn someone away the other day just because it was so flat. The chance of rejection just would have went through the roof. My favorite ear piercing, I think I like rooks. I'm not sure why I like rooks, but they're easy to heal. I love the curved barbell, the look of it. As far as like jewelry options, I probably like conch second, because you can do a lot of large clusters, you can do the rings, and you can really change up the look real quick by a large piece of jewelry. So yeah, rook could be first, conch should be second.
So Anna's got a problem. One of her friends got a helix done recently, and now he's just crazy about getting more piercings. But he's set on going and getting his lobes done at a pharmacy with a piercing gun. How do we talk him out of it? You just got to explain the dangers of it. Ask them, what are the dangers of it? Why shouldn't I use a piercing gun?
Guns can't be sterilized. They're made out of plastic. We run everything through our sterilizer, just like one of these, which kills all living organisms. When I run our things, I put little integrator strips, which test to make sure that everything is sterile and clean. We wash our hands in the sink before we actually do the piercing. Go to the mall and look, see how they do their sterilization process. They use a piercing gun, put it in a drawer, grab it, move on to the next person. No hand washing involved. The piercing guns are one size fits all, and we all know that no one has the exact same size shape. So you're setting yourself up from fail. Have your friend watch this video and show them exactly. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's not worth it.
So if you're about to get a tongue piercing in the next 30 minutes, what are the last minute tips you'd give?
Eat a nice big meal right before you
They have
go
30
in.
minutes. There's no time to eat.
Yeah, there is. It gets something in your system because you're gonna be eating slower for the next while. And yeah, bring a good friend with you to go get a pierce. It's not that bad, but you're not gonna be talking very elegantly afterwards. Not for a couple days, anyways.
All right, so we got a problem here. We have a helix piercing, but it got done with a ring. We've already had it for 3 weeks. It seems like it's okay, but at this point, they want to know, should they just change it or just hope that it heals this way?
You are trying to heal that fistula or tubate scar tissue through there, and if it's doing good, if it's not broken, don't fix it. If it starts causing problems in the future, maybe then think about changing to the ring. But you're trying to heal that tubate scar tissue, and right now that scar tissue is really thin. Changing things out can rip and tear and cause bumps and extra irritation. It's too early for this. If it's not causing problems, leave it be.
Will a nose stud suit any shape of nose?
Will a nose stud?
Will it look good on any nose? Or do you think there's noses that are just shouldn't have a stud?
No, I think everyone can have a nose stud. I don't think I've ever turned someone away saying, "Oh, this is going to look awful," because it's placement. A better example would be a Monroe piercing, Monroe or Madonna, depending on what you want to call it. But anyways, it's placement. Sometimes you see someone with a Monroe and they're really, really wrong, and it maybe needs to be lower or further out or further in. It's the same thing with a nostril. It depends on your overall look. Are you want to wear a ring? Don't go too high because you have to wear a huge ring because doesn't look as good. So finding the right placement is the key, but I think everyone can get a nostril piercing.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So hello from Sweden.
Hi, Sweden.
Not a question. Just wanted to tell you that we appreciate all your YouTube videos and got a conch and a helix because of you, and they look awesome.
Well, I am honored, and thank you for watching. I really do appreciate that. Pretty cool. All over the world. I love this so much.
So, Cardi has a problem. Pierced her nipples herself, and they keep swelling, and the bar tries to go under the skin, and they even got longer bars. How do you make them heal faster? And do they have bars longer than 18 millimeters?
How big is 18 millimeters? Can you?
25.4 in an inch, I think, or 24.5.
Yes,
One
they do.
Of those two.
Yeah. They sell many, many different lengths. So, yeah, I have measurements for probably almost every millimeter all the way up to, I'm not bad at millimeters. I have 1.5 inch, 2 inch barbells here. So that's all the way up to
that's
50.
50 millimeters.
So yeah, they do make them. You got to find them. Maybe get some bigger beads. If the beads are getting sucked in already, bigger beads won't get sucked in with the longer bar. I hope if you pierced your nipples that they are through the nipples and not deep into the areola. That is super, super important. Should be at the base of the nipple and the areola. If it's buried into the areola, you might want to think about taking them out and redoing them because they're going to be forever to heal if they ever heal at all.
Can you wear a regular hoop earring with a transverse lobe?
I giggled because I tried something a long time ago. Generally, no. Unless you have really, really thin ears, you're not going to be able to wear the transverse lobe. Everyone's asking, what's a transverse lobe right now, I'm sure. Okay, instead of doing the normal straight through piercing like a lobe, a transverse is side to side. Typically, you're going to see a bar going from here to here if your ears hang down. The reason I giggled is because back in the day, I tried piercing someone with a transverse lobe with a ring, and I was like, you can't have the straight going in, so I decided I'd pierce one angle in this way and one kind of going this way to give it a natural curve. And I used 2 piercing needles, but what I didn't think about was when you pierce one needle into the next, it creates a path and there's an opening in the middle, and blood just started kind of pouring like hoses out of both sides, and it was a mess. I got the ring in. I don't think it healed up. I tried, but generally no is the answer to your question. Trial and error back in the day. Oops.
So, sorry, I got lost where I was for a second.
That's okay.
Bump on an industrial. What do we do? They've tried everything.
You tried everything. Stop putting stuff on it. Everything's a lot of stuff. Maybe emu oil to calm it down. It depends on how old your piercing is. Maybe go to your piercer, have them put some tapers in there. Or when you take it out, see if your bar shifts. If it completely shifts and wants to sit in a natural different angle, you probably won't heal it up because they're pierced at wrong angles. They have to be perpendicular with each other. If they're pierced like this and you're forcing your ear, that's what causes the bumps.
So how would you recommend that we style ears where the flat areas are very large and they have not much of a ridge around the outside, so helixes are kind of out of the question? Sounds like it's pretty similar to the one ear you have there, actually.
Similar to something like this,
yes,
where it's really, really flat. It depends on the jewelry you're looking for. If you want to do larger clusters in this area up here, don't do like the big crescent moons because they're just going to spin. Typically, if you have a ridge on the side of your ear and you do the crescent here, that ridge stops it from spinning. But something like this is going to be like a propeller, so find something round. Sometimes you can do like the stacked thing where you have one upper, one lower, create squares, diamonds. It's personal preference. Is there a shape you want? Do you want to do a constellation? The shape of, so there's a lot of variables, but I like round or symmetrically shaped designs to do in that area. You can always do one big one right in the middle and wear something super elaborate, beautiful and simple.
So Sophia has had lobe piercings for about 8 years, hasn't worn jewelry for the last 5 though. Recently put some jewelry in and it's bleeding and feels like there's a huge painful bump inside. Mm-hmm. What could it be?
That is the fistula all swelling up because of that stretching and added agitation to it. So you could take ibuprofen, Aleve, or Advil, some sort of anti-inflammatory to help keep the swelling down. Keep your piercings clean it maybe with a wound wash spray. If it bled, that means it's an open wound again for a little bit. And just be patient with it. Leave your jewelry in. If you take it out now after having it out that long and you irritate it and it bled, they will close up and close on you. So you have to leave it in, make sure it's long enough for the swelling, and just keep it clean. Don't touch it.
So Lonely Bones got a vertical labret piercing on the 5th of November, and it's not like a bump, but it's more like pus or skin buildup, and they keep accidentally licking or biting the lip, so they're worried that it won't heal.
Yeah,
just try to leave it alone. Just try to stay off of it.
In a situation like this, I don't know if it would fit right, but one of those no-pull bumps, because it's a larger silicone disc, will protect you and stop you from maybe licking it. Okay. I don't know if you would have the room for it or how round your lip is, if it would sit flat or proper, but that might be an option.
But a silicone no-pull disc.
Maybe if it's being irritated because you're licking and playing with it, if you can stop that. It's not going to look the best, so that kind of gives you an option. Stop licking it or have that huge disc on your lip.
Hello from India.
Hi, India.
Is it okay to use a curved barbell in a fresh helix piercing?
Is it okay? Yes, you can heal it. Is it preferred? No. I like straight bars in there as opposed to the curve because the piercing is done straight. With the curve, there's going to be the weight and things naturally wanting to pull side to side. I like the flat disc with the ball or gem on the front as opposed to the curve. It'll still heal, but it could pull and heal crooked a little bit because they typically fall on one side.
So Sarah is pretty sure that their septum is pierced through the cartilage.
Okay.
They got it 1 year ago. Should they take it out or does it still work even though it's in the wrong place?
If you like the look of it and you don't want to stretch it up, keep it. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Only you probably know it's through the cartilage unless someone says something. If it's really low and you can see where the piercing hole is and it doesn't look right, then start over. But if it looks right and it doesn't bother you, you're fine. Just rougher healing process, but you're already past that. So
Pixie wants to get an industrial piercing, but is dealing with eczema on the ears right now. Is that going to affect the process?
Yeah, it's going to affect the healing process. You need to have that area to be clean. Technically, here in Nevada, we have to have that skin clean. There can't be any eczema, skin conditions in that area for us to legally pierce or tattoo in that area. So it has to be clean. And if it keeps coming back, you might have problems in the future. So it might not be the best option for you.
All right, we're going to try to hit these last few questions that we've got here and then wind it up.
That went quick.
It always does. We love talking to you guys.
Yeah.
So, Little Snorlax changed their lip piercing and there's a red circle on the outside. They got it 3 weeks ago. Will it still heal, or should they remove it?
It'll still heal. What did they change it to? Did they put a ring in or what?
It just looks like they changed the piercing. And it seems like 3 weeks is a little early to be changing it, right?
If it's feeling and looking good and wasn't red or irritated, you're fine to downsize to a shorter post if it was too long. Sometimes that can be too soon, but redness is still, I mean, you're still in the healing process. That's normal. But if you went from a stud to a ring and you put that in there, it's way too soon. I would maybe go back to the stud if that was the case. But if you change to another stud and there's a little, it might get irritated when you change it. Just keep cleaning it. It'll get better, most likely.
The Spicy Cowboy got a septum. Really likes the look of it. However, it's a little bit tilted, and they think it's because they flinched during the piercing process. Is that even possible? Is it the cowboy's fault?
Generally, I'm going to say no. I, as a piercer, will always take the blame for a crooked piercing. Granted, people sometimes do flinch and move, and you could get a crooked piercing, but the piercer should be able to kind of secure and the situation in the first place. The way I do the piercing, they're laying down, their head really can't move. So if it's crooked, I take the blame and I'd probably redo it right away. Now, yeah, we do flinch a little bit, but you should have, no, it's the piercer's fault. It's not yours. But try to hold still while you do the piercing. It does make our job easier.
So the Cute Flute got a nose piercing last week, and it's the one with the big hoop inside. How long till I can change to something subtle?
The one with the big hoop inside?
Maybe they mean like a nose, like a nose screw. Like
yeah. Okay, so if it's a nostril screw where it has a little corkscrew style twist on the inside, generally I tell people if it feels and looks good after a month, you're able to change to a different style or have it readjusted. I'm not condoning going to a hoop yet. Generally, if you want to wear a ring in your nose, minimum of 3 to 4 months, closer to the 4 months before you change to that style. If it's still red or irritated, it's a bad idea to change to a ring. But after a month, if it seems healed, you can change to a different style stud if you wanted to. It is still technically healing though.
So Erica's got a problem with her piercer. She has the correct anatomy for a bridge, but her piercer says that she doesn't recommend bridge piercings at all because of a nerve that she believes is in there. What's your perspective? Is there something unsafe about a bridge piercing because of a nerve?
I have never heard of any sort of damage or complication from any sort of nerves. There are nerves throughout our whole body. This is how we feel things. The fact that I'm touching, there's nerves in your fingertips, everywhere. If you feel your piercing happen, which we all do, you hit a nerve. So it's not the end of a world. You know, it's back in the day, we're like, oh, you can't pierce the cartilage because you'll hit a nerve and you'll paralyze half the side of your face. 27 years, I've never met that person that's happened to. I've heard of friends who this might have happened to in another state, but never met them directly. So unfortunately, there's a lot of negative information and wrong information out there. Pull out a Gray's Anatomy book, look in that anatomy and say, is there anything dangerous here? You know, and just like really break it down and ask the piercer if they know what nerve they're talking about, what things it could be. Ask me next week and we'll see if I know what you're talking about. There's nothing to really worry about though.
So you'd say try to find a different piercer then.
Yeah.
That person's unnecessarily afraid.
Sometimes we get fed information and I've had wrong information before and we need to be educated. That's how I found my apprentice, Jose. He reinformed me on a piercing I was misinformed on. And I was like, I'm impressed. That's how you get an apprenticeship, people. Impress your piercer. But yeah, I don't think there's anything dangerous. The only real danger is bone erosion if it's up against the bone.
Excellent.
Yes.
So, question, is a scoop piercing really that bad? And is the snake eyes worse?
Snake eyes is worse. The scoop piercing is not the best piercing. It's going to be like pushing the bar to the outside of your tongue. A lot of times it's going to reject out. I don't know if those taste buds regenerate or not. I don't do them. It's two separate muscles and you're trying to connect them. It's going to affect your speech. I'm not a fan. Not a fan. But yeah, snake eyes is worse than the scoop. But yeah, what's worse, one or the other? They both can be bad.
They're all bad for your teeth.
All right, how are we doing here?
We are going to wind it up. Unfortunately, we are out of time, so let's ask one more question.
Sure.
So we'll ask Bridget's question.
Okay.
My parents spent a lot of money on braces for me as a kid, and I have had a decent amount of dental work done, but I love, love, love tongue piercings. Is there any way to get a tongue piercing without ruining your teeth?
There's always a chance. Now, the big thing is you got to check your beads on a regular basis to make sure they stay tight. Don't get threadless jewelry for a tongue piercing. I don't know any company who condones putting a threadless barbell in there because the beads can come loose and that can do a lot of damage because that thin pin in there. A threaded bead, downsized to the shortest amount. Now, if you're playing with it, rub it against your front teeth, you're going to get gum erosion and teeth damage. So don't do that. If you're not doing that, the only real concern is if the bead came unthreaded and you bit down on it. Generally, this is molar damage. So even putting plastic in there, sometimes that plastic is as hard as your teeth and you can still do the damage. A lot of times that plastic bead even has that metal threading on there, so you're not even fully getting away from it. So if you're seriously concerned about it, I wouldn't do it. Most of all the piercings I've ever done, tongue piercings are the first ones people retire, so most people only even have it for a couple of years. Once in a while people have it longer, but it's generally a bad idea if you're concerned and you have nice teeth. So that being said, thank you everyone for watching my videos. Thanks for sending your questions. If I didn't get to you this time, maybe next week we'll get to you. We try to get through these as fast as possible. And of course, make sure to hit that like for me before we go and keep putting holes in your body. We'll see you all in the next video.